The biggest mistake by far that any startup makes is not understanding what their users need. And beyond the users, the stakeholders. So, the person that uses the product is not necessarily the person who buys the product or the person who decides where to buy the product from or how to disinfect the product after it's used. So if you don't understand who all your stakeholders are, you can design the wrong product.
Welcome to NGBiPlus, a podcast about the organizations that support Canada's life sciences community. Hi, I'm Jim Wilson, and my guest today is Dylan Horvath, who is founder and principal of Cortex Design in Toronto, Ontario. If you're not familiar with Cortex Design, it's a company that helps get medical devices from concept to commercialization. In our conversation, Dylan shares how a childhood passion for robotics led him to eventually create the company, how MedTech became their focus, and what it takes to turn ideas into viable commercial products. Before we get to our conversation with Dylan, we'd like to let you know that this podcast is part of the NGBi podcasts, which were created to promote Next Great Big Ideas, Canada's Life Sciences Summit. NGBi is an annual, independently organized, not-for-profit fundraising event in support of McMaster Children's Hospital, and you can find details at nextgreatbigideas.com. This episode of NGBi Plus was recorded in November 2025. Dylan, welcome to NGBi Plus.
It's great to be here.
It is great to be here because we've had to reschedule this a few times, so thank you for your patience. My guest is my host today because we're in your offices in downtown Toronto on Peter Street. Thank you for arranging this. And I look forward to learning more about Cortex Design. But before we go there, I'd like to talk a bit about you, if we may. Did you grow up here?
I grew up in Caledon, which is about an hour outside of Toronto. And my parents immigrated from the States to Toronto originally and had my two sisters living in Toronto and then moved out to the country in Caledon. But we were always close enough to the city and they had a big group of friends in the city as well. So it felt like we were well connected between, country and city.
Now, growing up in Caledon, tell me you fly fished.
I did not fly fish.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I was out in cow country.
And you did an undergrad degree in science at Waterloo?
Systems design. Systems design engineering.
Most kids don't grow up thinking they're going to do a degree in systems design. How did you end up following that path?
Well, I was really into robotics. So when I was in high school, I would build a robot every year and enter it in the science fair. I loved taking, collections of inanimate objects and putting them together and animating them. And so I was sure that's what I was going to do for a career. I was going to be like building robots. So when I was applying for universities, Waterloo was one of the schools on the tour. And, I'd heard of electronics engineering and mechanical engineering, and neither of those were quite what I was looking for. And then there was this student manning the systems design engineering booth.
As you were just walking through.
Just as I was walking by, yeah. And that was literally how I found out about systems design and engineering. And that was the link. It was a little bit of electronics and mechanical and software, graphic design and storytelling with images, and really taught a systems approach to engineering problems, which was what robotics is.
So that laid the groundwork.
Yeah.
So let me back up for a second. That gave you the guidance on the degree to pursue, but what did plant that seed? Like, why was this of interest at that age?
Well, I was really into robotics, and there wasn't any degree that really made sense to learn how to build robots or to solve problems.
Okay, so I'm going to back up even.
Sure.
Like, where'd the interest in robots? Somebody give you Star Wars. Okay.
Yeah, Star Wars.
There we go.
Yeah. Like, born in the 70s, Star Wars was hugely influential. The robots on that, what was it, the Jawas or whatever, they had that like big trawler thing that had all like the damaged robots, and they had like the flea market of robots.
I remember that.
Stuff like that. Yeah. So I started building robots when I was in grade 5 or 6 and just continued that all the way through. And neither of my parents were into this at all. Like I was getting electronic garbage and like filling my room up with it. My room looked like the inside of vehicle in Star Wars. It was
Okay.
just full of stuff, you know, and I'd like carve out a place for my bed. They let me be. But yeah, I just kind of figured out a lot of that stuff on my own. And then I found people like neighbors who had, you know, a 101 electronics kit. And that, you know, they'd outgrown. And like I started learning how to put circuits together.
So the difference between your childhood and mine is that you could take it apart and put it back together. I couldn't.
Well, one of my stories, I distinctly remember when I learned that if you used a screwdriver to take things apart rather than a hammer,
okay.
you could put them back together again. That was like a big moment.
That's where I failed. So we're talking 92, 97, you graduated, and then you went to the University of Michigan to pursue a master's?
Yeah, that's right. So as an undergrad, I did this project. It was a walking robot project, and it was a very complex project. My supervising professor encouraged us to not do it because it was too big. It was too big a undertaking, but we did it anyway because we wanted to. And that ended up getting published in a journal, which was unusual for an undergrad project. That led to University of Michigan. But it was while I was there, I was working at the Mobile Robotics Lab and as a research assistant.
That's Johann Bornstein?
Yeah, that's right. We were working on mostly what my job was programming these robots that he'd had for a very long time, doing like motion algorithms and orientation algorithms. And I really was not enjoying it very much. I wanted to do research. Actually, I wanted to do like applied research.
Okay.
And I wasn't getting that there. But I remember looking at this robotics journal and flipping through it. And there was this underwater robot that had this robot arm that was beautiful. It was like a beautiful robot arm, which I'd never really seen before. Like, you know, you think of industrial robots and what they look like aesthetics isn't really a thing, right? But this was strong and beautiful and sculpted. And that Christmas I went home, this was like 98. And I was telling someone that I went to high school about it. And she said, she was a student at OCAD at the time. And she said, an industrial designer must have done that.
And sorry, the OCAD is the Ontario College of
Yes,
Art
it's OCAD University.
in downtown Toronto.
Yeah. So she had some friends that were in industrial design and she knew about that discipline. I'd never heard of it. But that was the first time that I'd ever heard of industrial design. So I was just like, what is that? Industrial design is essentially the application of technology to humanity and bridging that gap. Okay. Now I talk about industrial design as, you know, the industrial is at scale and the design is for humans. So solving problems for humans at scale. And at that time, I was just finding out about it. And so, you know, fast forward a few years, I decided I wanted to go back to school for a master's in product design, and I didn't have a portfolio. So I started Cortex Design as a shingle to get some freelance projects to build a portfolio.
Now, you did a startup before you founded Cortex, did you not?
I did, yeah. So in between that, I went to Texas to start a robotics startup called Gecko Systems.
How did you go down that path?
That was, so one of the lessons that I learned was don't start a company with a bunch of people you've never met.
Good lesson to learn, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't learned that lesson yet. So moved to Texas. The culture of the startup was not very positive, let's say, underfunded. I was living in Georgetown, which is just outside of Austin. Great barbecue and great college football. But everything else was not great. And so that kind of blew up after 6 months. And I drove back from Texas to Kitchener-Waterloo. And a friend of mine was working at a company called Timeline Technology and got me a job there. But I was billing out as Cortex and starting to bring industrial design into the practice of what we were doing there. And when that company blew up in about 2001, ever since 2001, Cortex has been its own thing, earning its own.
Okay. So, and Cortex is the lining of the brain. So did you come up with the?
Yeah, the name came years before, and we were driving back. I've never told this story. We were driving back from a cottage party. And I was, with a group of friends, and we were talking about the companies that we wanted to start, and what I was talking about wanting to build a robotics company, and we were brainstorming names, and Cortex came out of that. So it was, it was the idea of like it's related to the brain, but it was also like core technology, like those double layer meanings, And so it was like Cortex Industries was the idea back then. And then when I found out about design, it became Cortex Design.
Okay. And Cortex started in its infancy then. And how big was the team at that point? Like all of one and you're bootstrapping?
Yep.
And starting a company at any time is difficult. Was it what you expected?
Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. Starting a business. I actually, when Timeline Technologies went out of business, this was like during the .com bubble burst, when a whole bunch of technology companies that were funded by private equity went up in smoke. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, I want to work in design, or maybe I want to go back to school. So I did this, I call it the East Coast tour. So I started at Rhode Island. I went to RISD, then went to New York and went to Parsons. Then I went to Savannah and the Savannah College of Art and Design. And then I had a friend, John, who was working at Deloitte at the time. And he had a conference just across the border in Fort Lauderdale, like the state line. So Georgia to Florida. And then I was like, well, I'm in Florida. I may as well go to Key West. So I drove basically as far south as you could on the East Coast of the United States, received no clarity, and then came all the way back. And I think in the end, there wasn't a company that I found that I wanted to work for. I decided I wanted to stay in Canada. I wanted to be in Toronto. And there wasn't a company in Toronto that was the sort of company that I wanted to work for. So I started doing the work that I wanted to do.
Hi, it's Jim. When we come back, Dylan walks us through how Cortex moved from doing freelance projects to focusing on complex medical devices. Stay with us. I'm Jim Wilson, and you're listening to NGBiPlus, the Canadian Life Sciences Community Podcast. NGBiPlus is a podcast about the organizations that support Canada's life sciences community, and it's one of the podcasts we produce to promote Next Great Big Ideas, Canada's Life Sciences Summit. NGBI is an annual national networking event for Canada's life sciences community, and we invite you to join us. For details, please go to nextgreatbigideas.com. So that is what we are doing this podcast for, but it's not the reason why. The NGBI Summit is also an independently organized, not-for-profit fundraising event in support of McMaster Children's Hospital in Hamilton, Ontario. MacKids is one of the top critical care pediatric hospitals in Canada, and it provides healthcare services for patients and families in need from Niagara through Haldimand, Hamilton Wentworth, Halton, Waterloo Region, and north to Grey County. It's a catchment area of over 2 million people, and the work done by the team at MacKids saves lives every day. If you are interested and financially able to provide support for a very worthy cause, we hope you will consider supporting MacKids. For more information, please go to hamiltonhealth.ca/McMaster-Children's-Hospital. Now you know our why, and we appreciate your support. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show. Welcome back to NGBiPlus. I'm Jim Wilson, and my guest today is Dylan Horvath from Cortex Design in Toronto. So this would have been in the early aughts?
This would have been, this would have been like 2001, 2002.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the MedTech community in this neck of the woods like at that time? Like, was it wilderness?
Great question. I wasn't in MedTech. I wasn't doing MedTech then.
Okay.
It was a few years later. So one of the first people that worked with me or for me was Tristan Zimmerman. And Tristan Zimmerman had some experience with working at Labary, which is a large medical device company here in Mississauga, and doing work with Labary. That was the first MedTech work that we were doing. So they're one of our current and oldest clients, and we started helping them move into plastic injection molding and low volume, and showing them how you could design parts that were exactly what you needed them to do, rather than other processes which weren't as efficient for them.
So you're clawing at any business you can get your hands on, I'm assuming, as a startup.
I was doing like anything that had an aesthetic driver to it. Actually, I remember one of the first jobs, I was helping as a PA on a Wonder Bread commercial shoot that a friend of mine had landed the creative director role for, art direction. But I did have this ability to make electronics and design mechanical things and put those things together. So I had a bit of an advantage over other freelance industrial designers. So I was kind of working as a freelance engineer designer, building a portfolio.
So how many years went by eking out a living and building the company before you thought, wait a minute, maybe I should be pivoting into MedTech?
Yeah. Well, we had a few MedTech clients here and there, but like at the time, Cortex was a general design firm. We would say anything that has the ability to, back that I didn't articulate it this way, but advancing the human experience. So giving people the ability to do something that they couldn't do without a device or without a product. So we were always looking for, new and exciting technologies that had no competitors. So we're not interested in things that were just the latest and greatest version of, we like the next hair dryer, not interested. The next way to carry your coins, not interested. We had a lot of pooper scooper inquiries for dogs. I didn't do any of those,
Didn't expect you to bring that up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You'd be amazed at how many people have like a new idea about how to pick up dog poop. So dodged all those. But yeah, it was the MedTech that really felt like the most challenging and the most rewarding. But really what consolidated the move to be exclusively MedTech was when we did the XPRIZE competition. So we developed a functioning tricorder for the Qualcomm Tricorder XPRIZE competition, Cloud DX.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the time they were BioSign and they had entered and had been shortlisted in this competition. And the next stage of the competition to become a finalist, one of 10 finalists, half of the score was based on user experience.
Okay.
So you had to have the science and the technology established, but that was half of it. And then the other half was a compelling user experience of going through the detection and diagnosis of 15 chronic human health conditions.
So you had to come up with a prototype?
We did, yeah. At that stage of the competition, we were visualizing and designing the experience of working with the hardware. So this has always been my approach. Like the hardware is beside the points. It's the experience that the hardware gives you that you're designing. So, what experience do you want to have because you have this thing? What experience are you able to have because you have this thing? And flipping that script around rather than we have this thing now the experience of working with it is like this, and telling what the experience was, it was like crafting the experience.
So the light bulb went on, you went, yeah, this is where I want to focus.
It was a really challenging project. We were successful in getting them to be one of the 10 finalists. And at the time, there's a lot of turmoil in BioSign, and they were deciding not to do hardware anymore. And Cloud DX was formed out of the hardware assets of BioSign while in this competition. At that time, we needed to go from finalist with visuals to functioning prototypes in 10 months of a device that had gold standards for all of the detection of all 5 human vital signs with wearable and chronic human health conditions.
10 months.
Yeah. And it was crazy. Yeah. The only way to do it was total, guerrilla warfare. We were super aggressive in pursuing the people that could help with this competition. And it was also like a really big carrot to dangle, like, hey, would you like to compete in an XPRIZE? We're one of 10 finalists.
Yeah, and that's a huge prize.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a $10 million sponsored prize. And that was an insane project.
Must have been a wonderful learning experience. The answer is yes, we'll figure it out. And then, holy crap, what have I just committed to?
Yeah. And, there were components, of course, we had all sorts of components that we didn't know how to do at that time. Like we didn't have all that technology. Cloud DX really had this core blood pressure technology.
Yeah.
And all the algorithms for detecting arrhythmias and things that were part of the pulse wave. That was what their product was called. The pulse wave that could get picked up by the change in air pressure of the blood pressure cuff. So for the wearable had to detect blood pressure continuously for 72 hours without interruption. I think it had to take blood pressure every 10 minutes. So if you could imagine wearing a cuff and it inflating every 10 minutes, no one was going to wear that or put up with that for 72 hours. So, so one of the things that we had to figure out was how do you apply these algorithms to pulse transit time measurements, where you're picking up ECG and then you're measuring the delay in time before you get the resulting surge in blood pressure in your ear. And we had a sensor in your ear that was measuring oxygen level. And so between these two, you can derive systolic and diastolic blood pressure if it's calibrated by a blood pressure cuff. So that was sort of the foundation.
I've seen the device, and it is so elegant. You guys came up with the design.
We did, yeah. And that was interesting. That product was designed to win the XPRIZE. It was not designed to be commercialized.
It's like a Formula One race car, but you're not going to put it on the highway.
Yeah, it's like it's like sort of a consumer product, but it's also kind of a movie prop. Like the look of it, because from the beginning, we're winning. So we are going to design something that's going to shoot really well in the promotional materials that the XPRIZE is going to put out.
Got to have sizzle with the steak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we really balance that those constraints.
So is that the project that put you on this path of this is where we're going?
Yeah. That was such a challenging project and so all-encompassing and so rewarding that essentially was what consolidated.
And what year was that?
That was, so we became a finalist in 2014. So we had to build 60 functioning devices, and each device was actually 3. So it was basically 180 different devices inside of 10 months and deliver them to San Diego. So that was the major delivery was in 2015, and then there was an extension that went into 2016 to do a few different things, and then it was awarded in 2017.
So we're recording this the end of November 2025.
Yeah.
After that project was put on the shelf, and you said, "Okay, we're going to move forward." How long did it take to scale up the company? How large was the team at that time?
I think we had like 8 or 9 staff, and then we hired a bunch of subcontractors as well. So like the team working on it was probably over 25 or so, and Cortex was doing all the project management on that as well.
And you bootstrapped from day one. Did you have some investors?
Yeah.
Okay.
The way that project was financed, it was paid for by Cloud DX, and we knew that they had a shortfall of cash in the beginning. They didn't have revenue from sales yet, and so we needed to bootstrap it. But so we struck a deal with them to invest in their company. So we invested off our balance sheet for a short period of time, like for the amount of time that we could afford to do it. And because we were able to reduce their cash needs, we did like a debt to equity conversion. They were able to raise another $1 million on the output that we provided. So right away it scaled the value of our investment by about 10. Then with that cash, that they were now funded. Yep. And they weren't fully funded. They had to raise again partway through the project, and that was their stress. But yeah, it was a paid contract.
So high risk, high reward.
Yep.
So
which I love.
Well, yeah, you're in the business.
Yeah.
So you made the commitment to follow that path. You had about 8, 9 people on the team, and all of a sudden you had, thankfully, money in the bank. Mm-hmm. Where did you take the company from there? And like, who was then your target client?
So then our target client was people that were developing revolutionary new products. And usually our niche was something that was, human facing, involved electronics and mechanicals. So mechatronic kind of products where the mechatronics was not the point, but you needed it to be able to execute. So like we were making scanners, we were making cameras, we were making casino equipment. Actually, a huge project for us was casino equipment. We did that for like 10 years.
So everything, you weren't exclusively focused, obviously, on MedTech. It was, we need some good paying jobs.
Yeah, we were looking for, and things that had production involved as well.
Right.
So we've been doing production contracts for, over 15 years. starting with library. Actually, before that was furniture. So, I was doing all sorts of things, but working in MedTech for that project really consolidated my interest in pursuing that. And you need to do all sorts of things like get certifications, getting ISO 1345, which can be a big leap, in company culture, right? So like the kind of people that you have working on a non-ISO 1345 company, then moving that to a 1345 company, I don't have any of the same stuff.
Okay.
Just the one. Not necessarily because they weren't along for the ride, but we weren't growing fast enough for the growth of the people that were here.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure there was a cultural change, and with focus comes decisions. So,
and it wasn't a quick choice to go down that path of having every process documented and, having an SOP and a work instruction and, policies for everything. It was a very, very big difference in company culture between those two, and a big lift. So we started with ISO 9001. When you get a certification like that, it's a quality management system that you're putting in place. And we wanted to make sure that the quality management system reflected how we worked, not told us how to work. So we did a gap analysis and we figured out, what the difference was between how and what we did versus what we needed for 9001. And then we got that first. And then always with the intention of getting 1345. And then a couple years later, we got that. And then with 1345, the focus to be exclusively MedTech came into play.
And what year was that?
I think it was like 2020 when we got 1345.
As you're doing all of this analysis and whatnot, I'm assuming you also took a look at the market and said, okay, who are my competitors going to be? How many competitors are there?
There's hundreds. So if you're looking for a top design firm to work with in medical device, you have a lot of choice, and the choice that you make depends on what's important to you. Sometimes it's a particular area of medicine, and some design firms will specialize in, cardiology. For us, we look for clients where the interaction with the device is core to its product value. And that's most things, actually. But where the founders are aligned, or where their investors are saying, hey, we can't launch this commercially unless it has empathy for the people that are using it. That's one of your gaps. But we also need it to work. That's what we do. So
your target client right now is a company, fill in the blank.
Yeah. So a company that has a class 2 product. Yeah, ideal customer for us. They're a client that's probably been in business for a couple years developing their core technology. Their technology is going to launch in a market as a class 2 device, and they have a product that is working close to the body, or close to the clinician, or close to the patient. And usability is really essential for the success of that product in the marketplace.
And I'm assuming your marketplace is global. Like, it doesn't matter where people are.
It doesn't matter where people are. Most of our clients are in the States or Canada. And that's probably for time zone and market knowledge more than anything else. Happy to work for European clients too, but we haven't yet.
So when should they call you?
They should call us when they have tried to turn their technology into a product and they can't figure out what they're missing. So a lot of the times our best clients have attempted to do everything in-house. And, I think one of the really challenging things, especially when you're funded, is the people that have funded you want you to operate quickly. And I can tell you from experience that collecting a team like this does not happen quickly. And, it's not just the people, it's the system of working together that takes time to develop. So most of the staff here want to work on projects in a deep way for a period of time. And then, you push them through development phases. And then the phases for a company that are required after the product development is done, all those people, you don't need them anymore. So if you've staffed up, you got to staff down at the end of this design process. And that's why Cortex Design exists. But yeah, consumer medtech broadly is the type of device.
What's been your biggest win?
Our biggest win. We've actually just come off our best year ever, which is amazing.
Congratulations.
Because I know the market's been tight. But I think one of the things that we did well in the past year was concentrate on strategic clients. So clients that are already in the market are selling products and they need to compete with a new barrier, or they have new opportunities to pursue and have the ability to finance those development projects. It's a mix of Canadian and American companies that we've been working for. And that focus actually has been really helpful. We actually have half the number of clients in the past year as we did the previous year, and about 25% more revenue. So smaller, larger projects, which is broadly what's happening in the market right now. There's less money for small projects and there's more money for big projects.
Hey, it's Jim. When we come back, Dylan reflects on the lessons he learned building Cortex Design, some of the decisions that shaped the company, and the importance of focus. Stay with us. I'm Jim Wilson, and you're listening to NGBiPlus, Canada's Life Sciences Community Podcast. The NGBiPlus podcast is about the organizations that support Canada's life sciences community, and our goal is to shine a light on the companies and organizations who are typically behind the scenes providing services and guidance that, well, often goes unrecognized. We hope you like what we're doing, and if you do, we have a favor to ask. Please promote us on social with the hashtags NGBiPlus, NGBI, and NGBI Summit. Oh, and don't forget to become a subscriber so you don't miss any future episodes. We really, really appreciate your support. Now, let's get back to today's conversation. Hi, it's Jim Wilson, and I'm speaking today with Dylan Horvath of Cortex Design, who's about to explain how what turned out to be a high-risk MedTech project helped define their focus, their approach, and their partnerships. What's been your biggest lesson?
Well, we have a slide on our 3-year vision document, what we're going to look like in 3 years, that says we don't build surfboards. And that is a bit of a joke on a project that we did in the past, but going too far outside of your wheelhouse can be dangerous. And if you try to be everything to all and do every kind of project, you can make mistakes. And we made mistakes in the past that were expensive ones. And so part of the focus on MedTech has been focusing on getting really excellent at that. And it helps all of the staff. Being aligned on a mission and being aligned on a particular vertical is really powerful. And I think that's been one of the reasons why we've been successful in the past year.
I don't know if you can answer this easily, but does something come to mind that has been your best mistake? Like, oh my goodness, what did we just do? And wait a minute, and it turned into a win, or something that was of value, maybe non-monetarily.
Well, when you say that, the story that pops into my head right away, we have always been interested in just tackling problems in growth mode. Like, 10, 12 years ago, I would say yes to anything that I was really interested in, figure it out later. And my attitude was like, hey, people are doing this, so there's a way to do this. I'll just figure it out. And, you can get into trouble doing that sort of thing. So I was actually for a piece of equipment used in casinos, and it was a very important project for us and for our client. And we had some manufacturing partners in China that we were using, but we hadn't really developed those relationships yet. We'd given them some money to do some tooling on this like critical timeline thing. And then we went over to visit with them for the first time. This was like maybe the second time I've learned, don't jump into a relationship with people you haven't met yet. And it was not a factory that was going to be capable of finishing it. And so it was actually me and Tristan. We were in Dongguan at this horrible factory. Actually, it was in Foshan. We were in Foshan, China, which was not even the right city to be doing this in. But we landed at this factory. We realized we were in deep shit. And the client was coming like the next day. And so I got on the phone. We postponed the client by a day. And we moved all the production to another factory that I'd been using in the past for another product. We did, yeah. I called up my buddy Mark at the factory, and said, yeah, I need you to do this. And he was like, I don't think we can do it. I'm like, well, I think you can. And you're going to need to, because I really need you to do it. They were like a consumer electronics company, the company that I was moving it to. They did complex consumer electronics and gaming systems and things like that. This was not something they had done before. It was an electronic shoe that could read the value of cards as you're pulling them out. And we had it all prototyped and designed, but it needed to go into production. Anyway, he agreed to do it. We fessed up to the client, said, we've made a mistake. We tooled at the wrong place. We need more money to move the tooling. They were like, no, this is your mistake. You're going to pay for it. And we're like, okay. Anyway, we figured it out. And that client ended up being a huge client for us for 10 years after that point. But yeah, I think that mistake of assigning something just on goodwill, right, because people tell you that they can do something
without doing the absolute due diligence that's required.
Yeah. So we don't do that anymore.
Good lesson. So the company's doing really well. You just had a record year, and you had an announcement earlier this month. You brought on you've had one partner. Mm-hmm. Who is that, and when did he join? When did he show up?
Yeah, so Gary Lee joins Cortex as an investor. So he's a director and investor in Cortex. That was in 2020, and then just this past year, two of my employees came on. Two directors, but not shareholders, came on as partners as well. So we now have 4 owners of Cortex.
Good. Now you're still a young guy. Is this a bit of succession planning on your part, or you need to spread the workload around so you don't go absolutely insane?
Yeah. Well, also I think it's really important for the people that you rely on to benefit from the growth. Right. So they were in a position to be able to do that. And I wanted alignment on where we were going and what we were doing, and they were both motivated to join for those reasons.
Well, good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we were talking about mistakes a moment ago. What is the biggest mistake you see startups making who are coming in your door?
Well, most startups just want to be done, right? Like they want to have the final product, and a lot of times they have an idea of what they want in their heads. The biggest mistake by far that any startup makes is not understanding what their users need. And beyond the users, the stakeholders. So, the person that uses the product is not necessarily the person who buys the product or the person who decides where to buy the product from or how to disinfect the product after it's used. So if you don't understand who all your stakeholders are, you can design the wrong product.
Right.
And it's a killer. And fortunately, in medical design, you have to do formative usability studies, which means you have to check with your users while you're designing it. Our process is making sure that that's not just a check mark. It's something that you need for a market submission. You need to show that evidence. We embed it in the process very deeply. That's a big mistake if you don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've got something called the Foundry. Is that part of what you walk people through, or tell me about the Foundry? Yeah,
so the Foundry is what we call our portfolio of companies that we've invested in.
Okay.
Yeah, and we are definitely interested in increasing that activity. There's a real big gap.
Funding.
Early stage funding is a big problem, not just in Canada, but North America and globally. So there's a gap to be filled. I think with LPs, with individuals that are interested in pushing Canada forward or interested in pushing technology forward, that needs to be funded and needs to be nurtured while it's still a risky investment. Most of the capital that's being invested right now is in growth capital and larger deals and ones where there are already sales for a particular device or a particular solution. But we need to fund those early stage ones, or there's not going to be later stage ones to fund.
What level of funding are we talking about?
The companies that are raising between $500,000 and $5 million, let's say. So we'd call that pre-seed to seed kind of financing levels.
Okay. I was thinking you've got something called, and thank you for the description about the Foundry. You've got something called Basecamp.
Yes.
That's what I meant to ask. And if you could walk me through that.
Sure. So there's different phases of product development that we go through in our process. We have an early stage engagement that we call Basecamp. And Basecamp is designed to be a cross-disciplinary engagement across the teams for a set budget. And what we uncover is the gap analysis between where they are from a technology perspective, reimbursement perspective, a engagement perspective with their customers, and a technology perspective. So we do a deep dive into all of those areas for a limited amount of time on a limited budget to understand where we need to go from where they're at. What are all the tasks that need to happen in, phase 1, 2, 3, 4.
What's the success rate?
The success rate is pretty high. Actually, in MedTech, the success ratio for MedTech device companies is pretty high.
Define high.
Well, high is still in business after. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's true that there's a majority of companies that don't get out of early stage. But in MedTech, the ratio is about 25%. Consumer devices, it's about 2%. So if you are an investor and you need to invest a pool of money in a category, MedTech devices are actually quite high.
So, and looking out over your offices, which are quite nice, you do the design here. I'm assuming you contract out the actual assembly or production.
Yeah, so most of the design activities are in this office. Mm-hmm. So we have systems engineering, we have industrial design, we have embedded systems design engineering, which are the mechatronics engineers, mechanical engineers, and project management. All of this is geared towards, in the end, making something that's manufacturable. We've been doing contract manufacturing for 15 years. We'll continue doing that for our medical clients as well. We don't have injection molding machines and SMT machines. Most contract assemblers don't have that. Mm-hmm. They contract that out. So when we're going through the design stages, we have a huge list of all the vetted vendors that we've used in the past. And at some point it transitions from being, prototype level kind of quantities and quality into production design level. And then you have to actually start engaging with the same vendors that are going to produce at scale.
Okay. So anyone who has an idea that they're thinking, I wonder if there's a thing here, they should be reaching out to you and saying, hey, could I buy you coffee and have a sit down and just run you through what they're thinking and get an honest answer to whether it's something to pursue?
Yeah, most of the clients that we work with have a level of urgency where there's a problem that they need to solve, and that problem is getting a technology into market as quickly as they can. And they may not have that team in place to do all those steps. It's a real multidisciplinary kind of effort. But our real focus and goal is understanding the humans that are going to have an experience with your product and making sure that their voices are heard in the development.
Thank you for this. I've learned a lot about Cortex Design, and this podcast is about the organizations that support the community. And not to make you feel good, but I've always believed, and I think you've seen me commenting online, that Cortex Design is one of those organizations that very quietly does extraordinarily cool work behind the scenes. And good on you and your team. And thank you so much for this. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
Very best.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about.
That was Dylan Horvath of Cortex Design in Toronto. If you'd like to learn more about the work Dylan and his team are doing in medical device design and manufacturing, check out cortex-design.com. You can also follow them on social at Cortex Design. If you'd like to find out who I am, you can go to jim-wilson.ca. And for information on my team, please check out laboccupier.com. You can also follow me on social at LabOccupier. This show was researched by Xenia Pinto and edited by No Limit Marketing. We appreciate listener feedback, and if you'd like to get in touch, email is best. My address is jwilson@Leonard, that's LENNARD.com. I'm Jim Wilson, and you've been listening to NGBiPlus.